NBC Today Show anchor Ann Curry gave a tearful goodbye to viewers.
Everybody, it's 8:50, and this is not easy to say, but today is going to be my last morning as a regular co-host of Today. I will still be a part of the Today Show family, but I'm going to have a new title and a new role. And this is not as I expected to ever leave this couch after 15 years, but I am so grateful, especially to all of you who watch.
I want to start with some personal news. I will be leaving CNN in April. Let me back up. After most of my 20s working my way up in local news, I came to this network in 2008.
One day, these trusted figures appear on your television screen every morning, delivering the news with complete confidence. The next day, they're simply gone. Some were household names for decades. Others were at the height of their careers when it all came crashing down. And what happens after the firing is often more surprising than the firing itself. Some vanished entirely. Some tried to rebuild with only limited success. Others landed in places so far from television that you'd never guess. This list looks at anchors who lost everything and the very different paths they took after falling from one of the most visible jobs in America. The anchor whose exit became its own national story. Ann Curry spent 15 years building a solid reputation at NBC News that most journalists would consider a full career. She joined in 1997 as an anchor and correspondent, reporting on international events, humanitarian crises, and breaking news with a sincerity that connected deeply with viewers. She wasn't performing journalism. She was a genuine journalist who excelled on camera. By 2011, she had been promoted to co-host of The Today Show alongside Matt Lauer, one of the biggest roles in morning television. Her time in that seat lasted just 1 year. In June 2012, NBC removed her from the position in a move that drew widespread coverage and criticism. Sources inside the network indicated the decision had less to do with her performance and more with her working relationship with Lauer, whose opinion carried heavy influence at the time. Ann delivered an emotional on-air farewell that many viewers found difficult to watch. The network kept her on as a correspondent, publicly presenting it as a continuation of her role. In reality, the assignments and visibility never matched what she had before. She remained in that uncertain position until 2015, when she left NBC completely. Afterward, she hosted 2 documentary series, We'll Meet Again on PBS, which reunited people separated by history, and 1 season of Chasing the Cure on TNT. Both were meaningful, but neither restored the daily audience she once had. She has publicly expressed openness to returning to morning television, but as of 2026, that hasn't happened. She continues independent reporting and maintains a public presence, yet the prominent seat and visibility from her NBC days never returned. What sets her story apart is that she did nothing wrong. She was removed mainly due to internal politics and power dynamics, a different kind of loss. The career she built over 15 years simply absorbed the impact. If these stories of media falls are hitting home, take a moment to like the video. It really helps. The most watched anchor in America and the story that ended everything. Brian Williams took over NBC Nightly News in 2004 from Tom Brokaw, who had held the position for nearly 25 years. The handover could have been rocky, but Williams strengthened the broadcast into America's most watched evening news program for years. His mix of authority, dry humor, and seeming credibility made him one of the country's most recognizable news figures. Then, in February 2015, it unraveled publicly and specifically. Williams had repeatedly shared a story about covering the 2003 Iraq invasion, claiming the helicopter he was on came under fire and was forced down. Veterans who were there contradicted him, noting he was on a different aircraft that arrived later. He retracted the account, admitting his memory was faulty. NBC suspended him without pay for 6 months during an internal review. Additional questions emerged about his Hurricane Katrina reporting, including disputed claims of witnessing violence and chaos. The review found he had not always been accurate in describing his experiences. He never returned to nightly news. The network shifted him to MSNBC to finish his contract through 2021, where he hosted a late-night show that never matched his earlier impact. After the contract ended, he left. Since then, he has remained somewhat active. He volunteered as a firefighter in New Jersey in a sincere way, hosted a Prime Video election night special in November 2024, and in April 2026, Netflix announced a podcast with him called We're Back with Brian Williams. His fall was unusual because it was self-inflicted in a particular sense. He didn't mistreat others. He simply told inaccurate personal stories. In journalism, where credibility is the core product, that proved unforgivable. The morning show host who hid in the Hamptons for years. Matt Lauer hosted The Today Show from 1997 to 2017, making him one of the longest-running morning anchors in U.S. broadcast history. For 2 decades, he was a familiar presence in homes across the country, almost like part of the furniture. Then, in November 2017, NBC fired him within 24 hours of a formal complaint alleging inappropriate conduct. The termination was swift and very public. NBC issued a statement early that morning, and his co-anchors had to address it live on the show he had led for 20 years. The discomfort was plain to see. More women soon came forward with serious allegations. Lauer maintained the relationships were consensual, but the accounts described situations that went further. For years after, he stayed largely out of sight. He wasn't photographed publicly until October 2019, nearly 2 years later. Reports described him living quietly in the Hamptons, disconnected from his former social circle and avoiding most former colleagues. By 2023, his personal life appeared more stable. He had repaired ties with his children, kept a civil relationship with his ex-wife, and was reportedly spending time at a property in New Zealand with a girlfriend he had been with since 2019. Professionally, however, there has been no recovery. He hasn't returned to television or started any public media projects. The platform he held for 20 years is gone. Unlike Brian Williams, there's been no clear path back to public life. His story ranks among the most total disappearances here, and given the reported conduct, many outsiders have found it understandable. What stands out to you in these stories? Share in the comments below. I read them all. The veteran anchor who retreated to Long Island and barely came back. Charlie Rose had created one of television's most respected interview programs over more than 2 decades. His PB's show featured in-depth nightly conversations with major figures in politics, business, arts, and culture, the kind of depth rare on TV. He also co-anchored CBS This Morning, reaching a broad mainstream audience. By 2017, he was among the most prominent journalists on air. That November, a Washington Post investigation detailed allegations from 8 women of inappropriate behavior, ranging from unwanted touching to more serious actions. Within days, CBS, PBS, and Bloomberg ended their ties with him. As the story grew, more women came forward, bringing the total above 30. Rose stated that some accounts were accurate while disputing others, viewing the interactions as consensual. The industry response was immediate and total. His shows were canceled, contracts terminated, and decades of journalistic reputation dismantled quickly. Early 2018 reports showed him living quietly on Long Island, avoiding neighbors and filling time with fishing and tennis. The isolation was noticeable to those who knew him before. He has made limited efforts to stay visible, posting interviews on his personal website, including one with Warren Buffett in 2022. But these reach only a small fraction of his former audience. No major network has rehired him, and the site draws minimal attention. His case represents one of the most definitive professional endings here, due to the extensive, documented allegations spanning multiple workplaces and years. The anchor who lied about a company computer and lost a decade of his life. Steve Kmetko was a warm, knowledgeable, and enthusiastic host on E! News from 1994 to 2002, interviewing big celebrities and covering entertainment with authentic passion. He excelled at the role, and viewers responded. His 2002 firing had nothing to do with his journalism. While renegotiating his contract, he posted on his personal website urging fans to contact the network in support. When asked if he used a company computer for it, he said no, but he had. The network used the lie as grounds for termination. Kmetko has said in interviews that he didn't fully grasp the situation at the time and still finds the events confusing. What followed was clear. Attempts to find other TV work failed because he was seen as too linked to E! He left Los Angeles for Chicago to help his aging parents and took a job at an Apple store. The contrast between his past fame and this new reality led him to heavy drinking for years before achieving sobriety around 2016. Those Chicago years forced a deep reckoning. In a city where no one knew his television past, working retail alongside everyday people highlighted the gap between his former and current selves. Since getting sober, he has rebuilt a smaller public presence through the podcast Still Here Hollywood, interviewing entertainment figures and speaking openly about his sobriety and struggles. The guests and audience are much smaller than at his peak, but it offers a more authentic picture of who he is. His story feels quietly devastating, because such a minor lie produced such enormous consequences, costing him the career he had spent a decade building. The anchor fired for a drunk tweet, and the journalist who hid her firing for 3 years. Terry Moran, a veteran ABC senior national correspondent, saw his career end in June 2025, not from a long investigation, but a single late-night social media post. He tweeted criticism of the president and a senior White House official in language ABC viewed as violating editorial standards. The network suspended him immediately and fired him 2 days later. Moran admitted drinking when he posted, but stood by the content, expressing no regrets about the message itself. The tweet was deleted, but had already spread widely. What made his response notable was his refusal to issue a standard apology or express regret over the substance. He maintained it reflected his genuine convictions. This stance likely closed off some opportunities, but highlighted his consistency. Since then, he has launched a Substack newsletter on political commentary, reaching about 110,000 subscribers by May 2026, solid for newsletters, but far from his former broadcast audience. He hasn't returned to television. Brooke Baldwin's experience offers another angle. She joined CNN in 2008 and built a strong reputation over 13 years as a capable daytime anchor. In February 2021, she announced her departure on air as a personal choice for new pursuits. 3 years later, in a 2024 Vanity Fair essay, she revealed she had actually been fired. The issues began after she moved from Atlanta to New York while her executive producer remained behind. She described his behavior turning difficult and requested a change, a common step in the industry, but it was denied. She was taken off air for 2 months before being let go in January 2021. Waiting 3 years to share the full story gave her time to process and provide a detailed, credible account rather than an immediate reaction. Since then, she has not returned to mainstream TV. She hosts a Substack podcast and identifies as self-employed. The platform she developed over 13 years at CNN remains unmatched. Together, Moran and Baldwin illustrate how long careers can end abruptly, leading to quieter phases still being navigated. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. For more interesting stories like this, be sure to click on the next video that pops up on your screen. You never know what you'll discover next.